Okay. Hi, Ruchi. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Ruchi, I see that you are working at JP Morgan right now. So, what division do you work in, and what exactly do you do?
Right. So I actually work at JP Morgan Chase as a software analyst in their investment banking division. So my work here primarily revolves around building an intelligent analytics chatbot. So we basically try to optimize various trading workflows. We try to automate a lot of tasks for our external clients. And I've been building personally a smart bot that actually automates major tasks for our internal global teams.
Wow, that's interesting. You said that you were working on automation. So, can you give an example of some of the automation that you worked on?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say automation, the chatbot that my team has built, we basically do tasks right from conducting analytics on market-related data, or creating customized alert for our traders back in either London or the New York office, on the foreign exchange markets that we have. So I think it helps us reduce a lot of manual effort. I think we've reduced almost hundreds of hours of manual effort that had been going in before we built this product, and especially in a time sensitive market, time sensitive environment, this is very important, so in trading.
Right. So, time sensitive market is one thing, but if you're automating so many processes, don't you think that you're taking away jobs from people?
Okay, so while automation does reduce a lot of manual effort, which is done by humans, I don't think it can actually replace the human value. So for example, every automated task that we work on, it requires a certain level of human intervention. So that can be either in the designing process or the decision making, but that intervention is actually very essential for it to execute well. So it might not, although it might reduce the workforce that is needed for these tasks, I also think it opens up a lot of other jobs in other domains. So, for example, many of these jobs that will open up are a lot of skill based jobs. So, we have so many graduating people in India every year in large numbers. So I think these are the kind of jobs that open up for the youth of the country and that can actually increase employment eventually.
Do you think the graduates that we have in India right now are employable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these tasks are covered by topics that are actually covered in your undergrads. So a lot of them skilled workforce can actually contribute over here.
Tell me something about JPMC where you're working right now. What is their business, or what has been their focus on in the recent past?
Right. So JPMC actually has four major divisions. While I work in the investment and the corporate bank, there are certain other divisions like the asset and wealth management or the commercial bank. Now, coming to what they've actually been doing over the last few years, I think in major developments, they've invested very heavily in technology recently. In fact, I think there was around 10 to 12 billion dollars worth of investment over the last few years in technology. We have a lot of increasing focus in the firm, not just on financial services, but to pitch ourselves as a tech first platform, because that's what's needed in today's environment. So we're trying to build our own software. We're trying to actually migrate a lot of our software to our in-house cloud rather than relying on, let's say, third-party vendors like AWS or Azure. And I think the most exciting development, if I had to pick one, would probably be Onyx, which is our own blockchain platform. So we basically want to build and scale our digital solutions seamlessly. And I think in today's generation, a technology like blockchain is really going to help us achieve that. So that's been something that JP Morgan has heavily invested in recently.
Interesting. Hi, Ruchi. So you spoke about the fintech space. So what are the advancements that have been made in the fintech space? And I would like you to explain what fintech exactly means and what kind of work do these companies do.
Sure, sir. Hi. So I think fintech is essentially the integration of technology into these new services and products that are being offered by the financial companies. So it's usually done in order to improve certain aspects, such as either the product or the delivery. So let's take an example, right? I think the best example recently that I can think of is that RBI and NPCI has actually collaborated to launch an offline version of the UPI system that we have. So I think in rural areas, not a lot of people possess smartphones. So on feature phones, this offline system will really help. It might be aided by a Bluetooth. So that's a really great advancement. And I think talking about other firms, so firms like either Paytm, PhonePe, they are trying to integrate these digital payments. In fact, a modern firm like Zerodha, let's say, which is a digital-only brokerage firm, they've been also making amazing leaps in this space on in how retailers can, like you and me, small-time retailers can actually invest in the equity markets in our country. And of course, how can I not talk about the most prominent example recently, which are these cryptocurrency apps that have really come up in the space, encouraging investors to, pool their funds in that direction as well.
This sounds quite futuristic, but what issues can such rapid payment services cause?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are certain major issues that we'll probably have to address in the near future. Most of them revolving around security and vulnerabilities. So I think one very common concern is fraud happening in digital payments. And I think with UPI, when everything is literally just a click or a touch away, that can probably increase. So I think we need to actually invest and make sure that these services are very secure.
So how do you make sure that you make it happen?
So I think eventually we'll have to bring in certain amount of regulation in all these modern tech and new age solutions, especially if they are dealing with direct transfer of money, right? So this can either be done by building better technology to prevent such frauds or building highly resilient networks where it's very difficult to hack or breach them. For example, we've seen recently that SEBI has started increasing its scrutiny on all these new age crypto apps. I think this is very essential in order to protect retail investor interest. So I think that is one way to go.
Yes, I agree. So in other news, did you hear about the incident at the Oscars? And what do you think about it? Is it right?
Yes, of course. So I believe you're referring to the slapping incident that happened by Will Smith. Personally, I found it a little disturbing, to be honest. I actually feel that the comment that was made on his wife was a little mean and might be uncalled for, especially in a public setting like that. But I don't think it really justifies the action that Will Smith had taken, where he actually slapped Chris Rock. I mean, it could have been this matter could have been taken offline or resolved personally, but because these actors are essentially serving as role models for a lot of people. And when they are at this really prestigious award ceremony, which is one of the most honorable ones in the history of cinema, I think they need to be careful about what they do because it actually throws the wrong message to the people that are actually watching the show. So it could actually influence people that look up to them. So I think things like this they can be avoided. But of course, in his defense, he did profusely apologize for it later, and the Oscars also took some action against him. But yeah, all in all, I think it was a very weird incident that happened.
So as a manager, Ruchi, if you are faced with a certain kind of a situation, the way it happened in the Oscars, what would you do?
So I think first of all, it's very important to take consent of the people that are involved in the situation. So in this example, probably the actors could have been brought together by the management to talk it out through first. I think taking a public stand without consulting the stakeholders might not be the best idea. And I think if internal resolution does not help fix the problem, then of course we can launch an inquiry, we can do better things. But I think taking the consent of the participating stakeholders would probably be priority one for me.
And do you think that there could be a marketing angle involved to it with Oscars?
Yeah, absolutely. That thought actually did cross my mind. So, I mean, incidents like this don't happen a lot, right? So, it could have been from a marketing perspective, but then again, it felt very real for it to be a marketing gimmick. And of course, it was a very personal incident that happened, not something that could just be thrown off as a marketing gimmick. So, I think it probably wasn't that.
So Ruchi, are you aware of any government policies for human welfare in India?
Sure, I can name a few. So, off the top of my head, I can think of Manrega, which is the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. I think it basically gives a legal guarantee to people in rural areas of 100 days of wage employment. Another one, and a fairly popular one recently, has been the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. With COVID hitting and so many people losing their homes, migrant workers facing issues, I think this is an important scheme. So I think the scheme essentially tries to provide affordable housing to the urban poor. And I think they almost have a target of building 2 crore houses by the year 2022. And of course, the last one, being a woman, I would probably highlight the Beti Bachao, Padhao Andolan. I think it's very important that policies like this are brought on and campaigns like this are conducted, because it really helps eliminate gender discrimination and encourage women empowerment and education, especially in rural areas where the need is much more prevalent.
Interesting, Ruchi, that you mentioned about these. Anything that you do apart from JPMC and the work that you do there, and what are the kind of
Yeah,
interests you have?
sure. Sure. So I think in the last 2 years over the pandemic, I have picked up this hobby of reading, specifically the non-fiction genre. So I personally love to read about topics such as, technology, personal finance, or investing. Mostly, I think this interest sprung because of the pandemic. So I had a lot of free time on my hands, and this is when I actually started investing my own salary into the markets. So I think reading books around these topics has really helped me gauge more about it, learn how to take various decisions, and in general, like I find them really insightful.
Oh, that's interesting. Which books have you read recently? And you mentioned that the pandemic has helped you in your reading spree. So I'm assuming that
Yeah,
there might be many.
yeah. So of course there are many, but I'm just going to name a few of my favorite ones. So I think some of my really memorable book reads have been The Psychology of Money and The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So, like I said, the pandemic has really helped me learn about investing. So, psychology of money actually comes in here. It's basically a book that talks about the behavioral aspect of money rather than the rational side. It explains how human beings like you and me are not really 100% rational when we perceive how money works. And that's why I really find that book insightful, because it talks about this side that is not very well known. And of course, the other one that I read was The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So Naval is actually an entrepreneur from the Silicon Valley, and I really, really look up to him because of his thoughts and ideas. And in the book, he basically talks about, topics like wealth creation, freedom to do things that you want, specific knowledge so that you know what to do when trying to understand your own self, and how technology can really help you leverage all these advantages in life, and so on.
Right. If you ask me, I love fiction, but I've seen a lot of these people from this generation or the generation of yours. They love reading non-fiction a lot. I mean, you talk about Sapiens, you talk about the psychology of money that you just spoke about. Is this a common occurrence, or it's just a coincidence?
I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but for me personally, I've just realized that most of the people I really admire and look up to in the industry, a lot of them are really good writers. So they've all written a lot of books, especially in the non-fiction genre. So I always felt like I've gained something valuable, some sort of lesson when I read these books. Another possible reason for this occurrence that you just mentioned could be that, today's generation doesn't really have a great attention span. We have these really short attention spans. We like bite-sized content pieces and so on. So I think non-fiction chapters are usually sort of independent, where you can read them standalone, compared to, let's say, a long fictional novel where it goes on for a longer period of time. I think that could be one possible reason. But of course, nonetheless, I think that the appeal for fictional content is still at high levels. So nothing can counter that.
Do you think there is anything to learn from the finance influencers that you find on social media?
Yeah, actually, I do. So a lot of them give really relevant advice. Of course, one common issue I faced is a lot of misinformation as well. But I mean, before the pandemic hit and these influencers started creating so much content, I don't think people were really aware about this much. Like me personally, even being a graduate, I wasn't aware about a lot of these things. But now that they talk about it, I've started gaining an interest. I've started to research it on my own. So I think creating awareness is one aspect that they have really skyrocketed the interest in, especially the youth, if not the older people.
Right. And I'm sure you're part of that youth, Ruchi. Nice
Yeah, yeah.
having you here. Do you have any questions for us?
Actually, I do have one question specific to IIM Calcutta. So I've heard about this Management Center for Human Values that is in IMC, and I found it very intriguing because no other B school really has something like this. So I just wanted to know what exactly is it, or what's its objective? How does it work?
Oh yeah, I can tell you about it. So it started off for research purposes, and we usually use it to conduct seminars or workshops on leadership or skill development and other behavioral topics. But since COVID over the last 2 years, it hasn't been operational as such.
Okay, sounds really interesting.
Nice. Do you have anything else to ask her?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'm good too. Ruchi, it was nice talking to you. You will leave now.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. Same.
Thanks.